has to be a universal message. There cannot be a separate message that Christ taught, that Buddha taught. It is either true or it is false. It is either totally true or totally false. So there must be some underlying realization that is expressed in different languages by different people within different cultures. This is what we find. And this area of truth is the underlying basis for full acceptance. We accept you, we accept your religion, we accept your pathway. We also accept it may not be suitable for me, and it may be suitable for others. We won't try to convert you or change you. We have a message that will enable a Christian to be a better Christian, a Muslim a better Muslim, a Hindu a better Hindu, a Buddhist a better Buddhist, and even a scientific atheist a better scientific humanist. So he carries on. My thanks also like that. Then he says, we believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. What a remarkable message. It must have been a stunning message, an unusual message, with delegates from different religions, each one probably talking about theirs and maybe even promoting theirs. Today, of course, like as in those days, there is this kind of trend, if you will, this impulse to say, my culture is better, my religion is better. And then we're into competitive religion and the salesmanship. My religion is better because of this. Our uniqueness is this. Might as well say our unique selling point is this. So he's spelling it out very clearly. He says, so that all religions are true. This is our part of our, not belief system, but our true understanding. He says, I am proud to belong to a nation that has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all nations of the earth. With the Christian diaspora in the early days, Thomas was found to be on the Malabar coast of India. Jews who were persecuted and subject to the Jewish diaspora found their refuge on the Malabar coast near Cochin and other places, establishing synagogues there. Not one was criticized. Everyone was allowed freely to practice their religions. It is only, of course, when those religions were associated with superiority and a will to change and convert people do we find an infringement of these principles. Then he says, I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the purest remnant of the Israelites who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. That was in around about 70, 74 AD, or this current era. And there we find reflections of it in much of the early Christian literature coming out as Gospels. In fact, Christianity spread probably because of this diaspora effect of the smashing of the temple. And he says, I am proud to belong to the religion which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation. Zoroastrianism being the kind of cousin, if you will, of the Vedic religion, using still Vedic rites and keeping close to the fire ceremonies of the ancient days of the Vedas. He says, I will quote to you, brethren, a few lines from a hymn which I remember to have been repeated from my earliest boyhood, which is every day repeated by millions of human beings, and by now probably about 1 billion. But he's now not talking in the original Sanskrit or anything like that. What he's doing is, and he's making a quotation, he's saying it in English. What a beautiful way of doing it. He's conveying a message that is comprehensible to the entire audience. So, of course, it goes as the different streams, having their sources in different places, all mingle their water in the sea. The different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to thee. Another endorsement about the universality of his message. It's a very peculiar thing that a religion identified distinctively has such a broad breadth, really indicating that everyone actually is a Hindu because everyone has a different path, and all these different paths are approved of and accepted by so called Hinduism. Then he says the present convention, that he's referring to the Parliament of Religions, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held. August because of the stature of the people who are attending it, the professionalism of the qualified people, not only the delegates, but also in the audience, and also august because of its uniqueness. It is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. What is that wonderful doctrine? Whosoever comes to me, again, he's making the English translation, through whatsoever form I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. This is the quotation from the Bhagavad Gita, the summary texts of the Upanishads, the message of the Upanishads. Incomprehensible language which incorporates ideas of its day also. Another message that things have to change, and yet we remain the same. Like a river whose course will change over time because of different geological formations. The water may be held up in an eddy or a current in one place, but ultimately it's the same river. So he's saying, whosoever comes to me, this is Krishna, but Krishna is talking from the position of cosmic mind, the personal God, the Logos, the Nous, through whatsoever form. In other words, it could be a form of Jesus, it could be a form of Buddha, it could be simply a symbolic form, it could be through an Om sign, it could be through a cross, it could be through a symbol, it could be through an image. Each one is a conceptual difference, but we are also worshipping that beyond concept. And after all, concepts are divinely revealed also. So whichever form we adopt, whether it's a form or formless, whether it's a form which is impersonal, such as Judaism or Islam may have, still when you say Yahweh, or when you say Lord Adonai, or when you say Allah, some form will appear in your mind. This is not just what I'm saying. These are summary words of Swami Vivekananda. So all men, that is all people, are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. And it's a struggle. It's not plain sailing, but you see, just in natural selection or survival of the fittest or any of those concepts, there's an inner urge to move forward. There's an inner urge toward our own ideal of perfection that we call God. He goes on, sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant fanaticism have long possessed this beautiful earth. He's making no bones about it. He's making this universal message not only strong, but he's also saying the opposite of the universal message would be sectarianism, would be bigotry, would be fanaticism. He says they have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. Here is a civilized, august assemblage within the context of Columbus's landing. Now, Columbus himself has been much maligned unfairly. He was an adventurer going in a direction he didn't know where to. He just went. And he went with a spirit of romantic adventure. And he, of course, he's associated with colonization and so on and so forth. But I don't really think that was his intention. And so he landed in the area with a sense of this adventure and not with this idea of destroying civilizations and imposing a superiority. Others did it, of course, after him. But that hasn't changed, or that didn't change. In another place, Swami Vivekananda had said, more blood has been shed in the name of God and religion than any other cause in the world. Of course, he was speaking before the last two world wars. But even in those last two world wars, there is a kind of conflict of civilization. Even though you may say it's about power, it's about land and so on, still you'll see that particularly in the First World War, it starts off in Croatia, and there's a difference between Orthodox Christianity and Roman Catholic Christianity, and even there divides sides. So indirectly, a struggle between that, indirectly, of course, indirectly, because the main cause really of such a terrible, terrible great war with its terrible, terrible tragedy that makes the heart bleed was more to do with European power structures and struggles and dominance. But if we make religion like that, we really know better. In fact, we're worse than beasts. You don't find herds of elephants fighting their own species, arrayed against each other with flags and blowing the trumpets and attacking each other. So he says that society would advance much more if we had taken the precepts of the religion to do with love, harmony, brotherhood, the question of being children of God, love your neighbor as yourself, taking these particular precepts, but not only that, but removing the sectarian element of it. But, he says, their time has come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all the uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal, so that even if the wars are not about religion per se, they are really extensions of egoistic tendencies, expanded from the individual to a nation or a culture or a people, extended to the idea that the whole basis of existence would be to expand the possession of land. But if one thing we know about wars is that in hindsight, we see that they were maybe not so necessary, that they had their disastrous side, and that the conquest was short-lived eventually, and 50, 60, 100 years later was really just a glitch on humanity. We are all wending our way to the same goal. Swami Vivekananda couldn't have said it more plainly. So his sisters and brothers, with a standing ovation, we are reported from, let's say, 7,000 people, many already standing, lasting quite a long time, made such an impression, and his message made such an impression. It was in those days a unique message. Today, it may not seem so unique, and yet the principles are in many ways unique, will be fresh to people's ears who insist that their religion is the only true religion and all others are false, and even grudgingly saying, our religion has the sum total of all truth. We have the fullness of truth. But other religions, we can reluctantly say, have glimmers of it, naturally, accidentally stumbling across some elements of truth. Not at all. Not at all. The fullness of truth will lie within you and gets revealed within the divinely designed framework that you have. You don't have to change the framework. The framework is just a framework. And so this wonderful, wonderful universal statement, so oft-quoted, that each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity. And then he goes on, controlling nature, internal and external. And then he goes on to say, do this by. And he gives you a choice of 4 methods commensurate with the psyche. And then he says one or more of all of these and be free, but indicates really in his movement that it should really be a harmony of all of these in this day and age. But then all these other details that are being stressed to create a sense of sectarianism and differences, temples, churches, books, and so on and so forth. These are secondary details. They're important details, but they are secondary to the principal purpose that each soul is potentially divine. And the goal is to manifest this from within. Now, his second speech at the Parliament of Religions would be why we disagree. And that consists merely of a simple story that he gained from his master of the 2 frogs in the well. Many of you are familiar with that. But it's the same kind of theme that, having talked about acceptance, talked about universality, the next question that is posed is, well, then why do we disagree? And he puts it in a story form, which is extremely explicit, that each person defends their own little well. And it is a little well. It is a small scope compared to the totality of truth which is available. And we can't accept somebody else's position as long as we accept our own paradigms, our own axioms. And it's not restricted only to religions. Science also has this. Today, science has this system of dogmatic approaches. And it's difficult to shift, even in the light of new understanding of science. Science boasts, we are open-minded, we are prepared to change, we welcome new discoveries. Well, that is all so much hot air. It may be true for some, but the vast majority don't wish to shift from their preconceived notions. We take, for example, the insistence on a wonderful idea, that is this string theory, that at the bottom line, the fundamental essence of all material existence would be vibrating strings. It's a beautiful idea. It's a wonderful idea. It creates a certain unity. But you see, it is mathematically highly complex, and while providing a kind of aesthetic beauty that is desired in nature, may be superimposed on nature, we will see that experiment after experiment has not found any basis to be found in what is called supersymmetry, and yet a huge, huge experiment has been constructed for this purpose and found nothing. Over 16 miles or so between Geneva and Switzerland and France anyway, and with the promise of a new one, even larger, with billions of dollars or euros or whatever currency you like, with 100 participants financing it. The expenditure is capable of lifting up the most deprived developing countries on this planet. Anyway, this is a few thoughts shared with you on this Parliament of Religions, on this Chicago address, this day, 11th September, 1893, and something that stimulated a whole new movement, a whole public way of thinking, which may in pockets have been here and there, but it was definitely this message, this main contribution that we who are Vedantins have. We can conveniently call it Hindus also, but then you see the perception of Hinduism is not as Swami Vivekananda has laid out. The common perception of Hinduism really is to do with cultural Hinduism. And while cultural Hinduism is valid throughout the whole of cultural India, Hinduism there, and wherever there was and is Hinduism, for example, in South Africa and other parts of the world, where large proportions, Guyana and so on, large proportions of Indian immigrants have gone and taken their culture with them. Even in more ancient times, even in hundreds of years ago, we find it in Bali, for example. We find it in the Angkor Wat and so on and so forth. Those kinds of cultures where these Hindu concepts spread in terms of cosmology and structure and a certain level of theological understandings. Along with that, philosophy, all of this spread. Now you see, our mission is to spread this message of Vedanta. Why would we want to do it? When as soon as you say we have a mission or we are missionaries, as soon as you say we have to spread this message, many people will think that it is like the missionary endeavors of the Christians who went across everywhere trying to convert, in their view, pagans and so on. But no, that's not what we mean. What we mean is that there is a universality of being, that we are one being. That is where our true democracy lies, and that the chief feature of our life is to discover this unity within us. And when we do it, we've discovered it everywhere. And now we become real contributors towards society, because we are doing the charitable work of offering people an avenue, an understanding in their own way that leads them to eternal freedom. Other than that, of course, we can give people social upliftment programs. We can listen to people in a compassionate way. We can be empathetic with people, but all the time holding this one ideal. Lord, you are standing there behind everything, full and free and perfect. And having a penetrating vision to get through to that and evoke this divinity that allows the eyes to shine, the heart to beat, the hand to move, the mouth to speak. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay, good, good, good.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.